In high school, I was obsessed with a blog about a man hitchhiking Latin America with no money and no Spanish. His name was Patrick Falterman. Along the way, he learned Spanish, survived on the charity of strangers, took odd jobs, and eventually reached the Amazon, where he lived for years in a homemade dugout canoe, writing about what he called indefinite vagabond travel. And to my 18-year-old mind, it sounded like the purest way a person could live. So I decided to try it myself, my own indefinite vagabond travel. And I would soon find myself standing next to a highway, thumb out towards the road, believing my real life was about to begin. That last semester of high school, I emailed Mississippi State and deferred my admission for a year. I meant serious business. I had saved about $3,000 working for Pizza Hut, and about $500 of that got me a one-way flight to Iceland in early May, the cheapest ticket to Europe I could find. Soon enough, I found myself in Reykjavik, and the very next day I started hitchhiking north on Highway 1, the road that circles the entire island. Going hitchhiking means meeting strange people, and I met some characters. First was a local man who seemed concerned about me and warned me to avoid the country's interior. Another was a very small man in a very large commercial truck. He sat on a cushion to help him see over the hood and had an anchor tattoo on his right forearm. He said he used to be a captain and had been sober for 2 years, but his hiccups and meandering conversation made it seem like he was drunk right then. Another was an older German guy who talked about having dreams of his past lives and how ancient peoples knew magic. He often seemed surprised by what I said, as if everything had some double hidden meaning. He dropped me off and offered to drive me more in the morning, but the next morning I deliberately started late. My favorite was a young Frenchman who had just finished volunteering on an organic farm. We bought a one-time grill and cooked whale meat outside in the cold Icelandic wind while he blasted Bob Marley from his rental car. We spent 2 days traveling together, and I remember him telling me in a French accent that happiness is better shared. In the small town of Sedisfjord, I took the 2-day ferry to Denmark. On the ferry, I met and drank with a German who explained his philosophy of post-whateverism. The idea being that by the time anything happens, you can't change it anyway, so don't worry about it. It's whatever. I arrived in Denmark and managed to hitchhike down to Copenhagen. There I stay with a Danish man I met through couch surfing. Within the first hour of meeting me, he starts to have a nosebleed. Seizing the opportunity, he rushes to his sink, fills it with water, puts his camera in the water, and starts punching himself so drops of blood fall into the sink. All of this to get a shot for his music video. On the surface, this probably sounds like it was all a great adventure, and that I really threw myself out there. And that is true, but looking back, that hitchhiking trip was odd in a few ways. I did throw myself out there, but I was still that same 18-year-old kid with little self-confidence who was not great at talking to strangers. I met lots of people on the trip, but I also felt lonely often and craved connection with people my age. Sometimes connection happened naturally and sometimes it didn't. One night in northern Iceland, I stayed in a tiny village that just had one restaurant/bar. That evening there was almost no one in the bar besides me and a group of art students who were traveling together. I worked up the courage to come ask to join them, and they said yes. So I pulled a chair up awkwardly on the outer edge of the table. They then proceeded to almost completely ignore me, with the body language of some students clearly showing they didn't want me there. I tried awkwardly a few times to properly join the conversation, before meekly excusing myself and going off on a lonely, self-critical walk under that Icelandic forever summer sun. I had not yet learned that people's reaction to me wasn't always a judgment about me and my value as a person. I also felt really nervous in Copenhagen. I tried going to a bar on my own in Christiania, but didn't work up the courage to talk to anyone that time. besides asking for directions. I felt so anxious and the nightlife seemed so intimidating. The only moments I really felt at home was when I was hitchhiking and having intimate one-on-one conversations on the road. Those moments felt manageable, and I am thankful for them and the few friends I did meet along the way. By the time I was couch surfing in Copenhagen, I had been traveling for almost 3 weeks, and I realized my money was being spent faster than I expected. I felt worn out from the constant moving around and the constant lack of privacy. So I booked a flight to London, and then a train to Glasgow, and went to stay with my auntie. I stayed with her that entire July, and ended up not having enough money to buy a flight home. My dad had to help his starry-eyed and penniless son. Needless to say, I did not achieve indefinite vagabond travel. I returned to Tennessee, gave up the idea of a gap year, and started university that fall to study physics. I would hitchhike again, 2 times, once that same year back in Tennessee with a friend, and one final time when I was 21, starting from East Tennessee and finishing in Oklahoma City. Those stories are for another time, but it suffices to say that I don't plan to hitchhike again. But I am thankful for the experience. I learned how important it is to do things that help you respect yourself. Going hitchhiking was a radical shift from my socially anxious and reclusive high school self. I went from being too nervous to get lunch with friends to traveling across Iceland alone. I felt like I really did something, like I really confronted something, and that's the foundation for building real self-confidence. But you can't just be brave once. It takes time and repetition. I still miss and think about that trip and the people I met and the magical feeling of it all. Standing on the side of the road with that military Alice pack, barely aware of what I was risking and believing that the world might open at any moment. Though I suppose the world has opened to me since then, in ways that at the time I couldn't even imagine.